and, reviewed some of its provisions and highlighted our concerns. The Act itself, sets out to provide easy access to higher education for indigent students in the country through a loan scheme. So the Act establishes a Nigerian Education Loan Fund, and it says that the way it is going to get money to operate that loan fund is that the money will be drawn from different sources, such as education bonds, endowment funds, 1% of all federal taxes and levies and duties collected by the Federal Inland Revenue Service, the Nigerian Immigration Service, the Nigerian Customs Service, and the fund will also acquire 1% of all profits from oil and other minerals. So it also says that donations and gifts and other potential revenue sources would also add to its funding stream. So it's like an open mouth. Anybody that gives it money, it's going to collect. So the funds also sets out for equal access to the loan, meaning that anybody from anywhere in Nigeria, as long as you're in a public higher education institution, you can access the fund. So it says that for the purpose of managing that money, a special committee is going to be set up, and that special committee will be formed by the Central Bank of Nigeria's governor, and he would perform the functions of establishing. The committee would be responsible for establishing regulations and guidelines for the management, administration, and disbursement, including recovering of the loans. Members of the special committee would include the CBN governor, the chairman of the National Universities Commission, a representative of the Vice Chancellor Forum of all Nigerian universities, a representative of the Rectors Forum, and other concerned bodies like a member of the Academic Staff Union of Universities and the Nigerian Labour Congress. But the CBN governor would also be in charge of appointing the secretary for that special committee. Now, as part of the provisions of this act, it grants the president of the country the power to alter the committee's decision. Remember, the committee is in charge of managing the loan and deciding who gets the loan and every modalities concerning the loan. But the act confers on the president of Nigeria the power to alter the committee's decision as he deems fit, if he is satisfied it is in the interest of the public. Now, for anybody to apply for that loan, that person must be a student that has secured admission in a Nigerian government established higher education institution and must have an income less than 500,000 naira per annum. Please mark that. Or come from a family that their income is less than 500,000 naira per year. The person must also be able to provide at least 2 guarantors. That is a civil servant with a minimum level of 12 years, a lawyer with at least 10 years post-call experience, a judicial officer, and a justice of peace. If you're thinking about applying for the loan fund and you've committed any crime, please discourage yourself from applying. You are not going to get it. If you have not committed any crime and by virtue of association and familiar ties, your parents have committed any crime or owe a loan that they have not been able to pay, you are disqualified from accessing the student's loan. Even you yourself, if you have a loan that you have not been able to pay and you've been marked as a debtor, you can't access the loan. Now, please, when you access the loan, remember that after accessing the loan, you are required to start paying back once 2 years after you complete your National Youth Service Corps program, which is the NYC in Nigeria. So whether you are a self-employed person or you are employed with anybody, once it is 2 years after you've or you are employed with any organization, so 2 years after, you have to start repaying for the loan. Okay, so our key concerns as an organization that has reviewed the act. We think that the 500,000 naira minimum income per year that the loan puts down as what you should be earning or your family should be earning is ridiculous, and it is a potential barrier to even the people that the loan seeks to help. Why is this so? The minimum wage as currently in Nigeria is 30,000 naira. It means that a single parent can actually qualify for that loan, right? 30,000 naira, you calculate it 12 months, and it's not up to 500,000 naira. A single parent can qualify for that loan, or if you're a student, you can actually qualify to get the loan. But the loan also says family income, meaning that the income of, if both parents are alive, father and mother, imagine they are earning 30,000 naira each, that's like 60,000. That is already above 500,000 naira per year. It means that such a family would be excluded. But in our reality, we know that the combined income of 60,000 a year and even getting over 500,000 naira does not mean that a lot of families have the wherewithal to sponsor their wards in tertiary institutions. In fact, even those people we call middle class in the country that earn above 30,000 naira still find it difficult to sponsor their wards in school because of the various economic pressures in the country, inflationary pressures, and according to our system, the economy as we currently see it, most families spend their money eating on food alone, which goes higher every day and every day. So it means that at the end of the day, such kind of families cannot afford the loan, and those families are even the poorest of the poor, right? So, and then the loan does not even consider families that have multiple children. So it's as if the loan is framed for a family that has just one child. So if you have one child, you can, but if the family has more than one child, 2 or 3 children who are in tertiary institutions, how do they assess this loan given the income cap? Now, another thing is that the loan is established to cater for tuition only. And we know that according to our national policy on education, universities do not really pay tuition. They pay other charges, right? But library fees and the rest. But tuition as school fees itself, we don't pay it. So, but now the loan says that it is only catering for tuition fees. What we should be asking is that, is this a subtle play to introduce tuition fees in universities in Nigeria? And now, if you introduce tuition fees in universities in Nigeria, how will the people who are not able to access the loan, who are the poorest of the poor, pay their tuition fees? Already we are seeing a pattern since the loan was implemented, since the Loan Act was signed. A number of public universities in the country have gone on to hike their fees, which we think is as a result of this loan. Another thing is that, there are no modalities for how it is just a vague provision. There are no modalities as to how students even receive the tuition fees. Are we talking about a yearly tuition fee? Are we talking about a tuition fee that covers all the academic session? What exactly is tuition fee when you say it? And when you say tuition fee, remember that students have to, search for accommodation. They have to get other things that enable them function properly in school. This loan does not cover it. It just covers tuition fees, meaning that the poorest of the poor, or even middle class, or even anybody, still have to fend for themselves when it comes to surviving in a school environment. Now, we think that the guarantor system reinforces social inequalities, and you can find the guarantor system under section 14C of the Act. How are you trying to, make education affordable for poor persons? And you are saying that a criteria for assessing that loan is for them to be able to provide at least 2 persons, a civil servant with a minimum of level 12 grade, or a lawyer with 10 years post-call experience, or a judicial officer, or a justice of peace. Please, I want to ask us sitting down in this room, how many people in the village have access to this sort of network? How many people from poor backgrounds have a network of a civil servant minimum grade 12, or a justice, or a lawyer with post-call 10 years experience who is willing to stand in for them to sign such a loan. Remember that there are repercussions if the loan is not paid. Those people who have stood as guarantors can be arrested or can, suffer the consequences of not paying that loan. Another issue we think is that the disqualifying conditions. Remember that I said that if you have committed a crime, please, and it is already on public record, do not think of trying to access the loan. It is already stated there that the loan is not for you. Even if you have not committed a crime, your parents or your guardians have committed a crime, by virtue of association, you are already disqualified from receiving that loan. So if you are owing money to in any platform or anywhere, the loan automatically disqualifies you from accessing it. Even if your parents or guardians are owing money to, you're already disqualified. Now we think this is ridiculous in a way. For a loan scheme that is set to pull the downtrodden, to use education as a tool of elevating people up, and you are now going to use such conditions to disqualify people, it is highly unfair. We already live in a poor society, meaning that a lot of people, by virtue of being poor, are already in debt. So this is a scheme that is supposed to help people get past their social conditions, and already it is already disqualifying you from the start. How do you float such a scheme? There's also the problem of insecurity in bank apps. I know a number of people who have had their bank accounts hacked, and those criminals had used their account details to collect loans from different platforms, meaning that by the time they retrieved their line, they were forced to start paying the loan by public. So now those kind of people that already have such kind of indebtedness, well, not due to their fault, due to the act of criminals, those people are automatically disqualified from accessing the loan. And where is the place for education as a tool for rehabilitation? Are you saying that a criminal or somebody that was, assumed guilty in a crime cannot decide to change his life afterwards or her life afterwards? Is that what we're saying? That if such a person decides to turn a new leaf, that education is not for them? And also remember that our criminal justice system is unfair in a way, because at every point in time marginalized groups are at the risk of being branded criminals, and many people have found themselves in jail for reasons unknown to them. So such kind of people, are you saying that those kind of people cannot be educated or benefit from that scheme? So, but even in all these things, the loan says in section 16(4) that if you don't, that even assessing the loan is based on condition of availability, which is very funny. All the places the monies for the loan is going to come from are just too numerous. So why put that clause of uncertainty that the loan is only going to be available based on disbursement, based on availability of funds? So that's really funny, and we find that a subtle reason to not give out loans to people, or to not even allow the poor benefit from that kind of scheme. Now there is something that a lot of people missed in their review, and we think it is important, maybe because it is seen as the conventional means in our drafting, but the sexist undertone in the drafting of this act is really unacceptable. At every point in the act you hear he, the president he, the student he, everything is he. Are you saying that there are no women or there are no girls that go to school in Nigeria? Is that what we are saying? Are you saying that? And this is even very serious, because as a person I could even get that loan, and when you want to retrieve it back from me, I'll say I'm a she. I can't pay for a loan. When in the drafting you've already said he. So it is not even about the drafting, but it's about that assumption that we assume that everything is male centric in the economy. So it is even dangerous for an economy that has so much patriarchal values entrenched in it. So it's almost like it's only a man that can benefit from that loan. So I mean, there are other things. We also notice the governance concern. Now the legislation gives too much power to the CBN governor. The CBN governor commits the constitutes the committee. The CBN governor appoints the secretary. The CBN governor decides on his own how much to pay members of the committee. Where have you had that? So if he decides this year that he's going to pay them 3 billion, tomorrow he can decide to pay them 1 million. I mean, it's just ridiculous, the governance concerns. And then you have the president for a committee that has those kind of peoples in it. For a democratic committee like that, you have the president giving that sole power to be able to alter the decision of the committee. You also have the fact that the legislation is imbalanced. You are only providing for tuition fees. You are not providing for the institutional capacities or values that students should be able to gain. I mean, if I take a loan, I should be able to be in a school where I sit down on a good chair to learn, where I have accessible toilets to use, where I have accessible research facilities. But we know that we don't have that in Nigeria. But the loan does not cater for that. So it means that you collect a scheme, you collect a loan, and you go to school, and you're not able to receive value for your loan. Who do you report to? But everything about the loan is about how we monitor the loan collectors, how we will do this and that, but not how we will provide value. There are a lot of concerns about this loan. I believe people on the other side can talk about it, but we will do so as the program continues.
Okay, thank you very much, Zikora.
Thank you so much. I think we've had such an interesting discussion, and I'm happy when the comrade from CAPPA talked about the US student loan and how the court upheld Biden's decision to cancel those debts. So in light of the court's decision, the New York Times recently recommended debt as a way to escape such a loan among one of its 6 recommendations. Yes, and it is not just a recommendation. People are already seeing debt as an option. People are already committing suicide in such a developed country as a way to escape that kind of debt. Imagine that kind of situation in Nigeria, which is way poorer in terms of welfare index. So nobody needs to recommend that debt as an option. People will take it. So the truth is that student loan is a war on education as a public good.
Yeah, thank you.
And we must resist that attempt to classify education as something that the government cannot be part of, as something that should be left for people who want to privatize or buy, or it won't work. And that's why we have to also, tell the Lagos State Scholarship Board, we're happy that you could join us, and it's really brave of you to be in the room. We're so happy to have this engagement with you. But we don't think that implementation can happen with the Student Loan Act. The details are already unworkable.
Yeah, thank you.
Nothing can work. So if it is already unworkable, it means that implementation will not work. And Comrade Gideon mentioned something about how student unionism is being quashed in public universities. This is an important point, because we've seen a lot of persons expelled out of school. The Student Loans Act does not cover that. What happens when somebody is expelled from the school? Does the student loan provide that kind of guarantee for somebody who collects a loan from it? So the issues are clear. I cannot receive a loan where by the time I receive the loan, I don't get value for my loan. Fix the schools. Pay lecturers. There's a brain drain. There's a brain drain happening. So whether you give loan, you are just giving loan for a value that cannot be gotten. So it is impossible. Like many of us have identified here, there was no reasonable engagement. There was no reason for this legislation to be passed in the first place. It's a horridly drafted legislation that does not take consideration of the practical realities of the country. So we're saying here that we reject this legislation, everything about it, in totality. Yes, the government has said that by September, October, it's looking to now begin to implement the act, just like with all the problems that we have seen. We are cautioning and advising them to stop it. It's not going to work. we have to sit down and look at poor people ways and approaches to addressing education as a public good, not just for higher learning, but across all levels of education in the country. Our education system is in shambles. As somebody already noted, consistently there has been an intention to reduce people and for the sector to be underfunded. Nothing can happen if the sector is underfunded. So Bode has already said our recommendation is contained, in this yes, in the last 2 pages, and we are saying unequivocally that the legislation should be discarded. There's no good to it. I mean, there are other mechanisms that are in existence that we can look at and see how we can revitalize those. We have the TED fund. What is happening there is a shame. We can look at the TED fund and see how we can modify the TED fund to meet realities of the people, instead of having to replicate and waste taxpayers' money in having a new mechanism.